Hello, you're watching Sightline on MNB World, an interview program that invites various guests for a conversation on different important topics. Today is December 25th, and we have invited to our studio Country Director of International Non-Governmental Organization People in Need Mongolia, Mr. Mungunkhishig Batbaatar. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for the invitation.
Mr. Mungunkhishig Batbaatar is the Country Director of People in Need Mongolia. Before taking up his role at PIN Mongolia, Mungunkhishig was a knowledge management specialist at the UNICEF East Asia and Pacific Regional Office in Bangkok, Thailand, supporting 13 country offices in 27 countries. He worked for UNICEF Mongolia as a knowledge management officer and consultant for over 5 years. He's also worked for government agencies including the National Center for Public Health, the Ministry of Health Mongolia, and international organizations such as Asian Development Bank, Voluntary Service Overseas, and Research Triangle Initiatives International. He earned his master's degree in development policies and practices from the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva, Switzerland, and his Bachelor of Science in Development Communication from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. I would like to start our interview from the introduction to your organization. Can you please share with our viewers what People in Need Mongolia does?
Okay, so People in Need Mongolia has been operating in the country for more than 20 years, but we have established our representative office around early 2010s. As an international organization, People in Need was established in Czech just in the aftermath of the Velvet Revolution by one of the revolution leaders. So if you could imagine one of the democratic revolution leaders in Mongolia did not enter politics, but instead established an NGO and worked for 30 years. That's what you get, and the result is People in Need Mongolia. For this year, through our strategic approach, we have been working in three pillars or three programmatic areas. The first one is emergency response and recovery. We are talking about flood, drought, and other natural and societal emergencies. And the second pillar is around climate change and environmental pollution reduction. And the third one is really to strengthen the civil society and civil space in the country.
You have just mentioned that the organization works in strengthening civil societies and democratic governance in Mongolia. Can you please share with us about the activities that were conducted in 2023 in this direction? So,
leveraging the sudden improvement and availability of the digital tools in Mongolia through either e-Mongolia or other digital tools that are available to everyday citizens and CSO. We are targeting and we are planning to work with hyperlocal CSOs. So hyperlocal CSOs are the ones that are working at the SOM or Bag-Hora level, not entering the national scene, but really doing some grassroots on-the-ground work. So through this work, we plan to strengthen first, their digital literacy of the organizations. Second, the cybersecurity aspects of the CSO space, because increasingly we are seeing some cyber attacks or cyber vulnerabilities that are being faced by the local CSOs. And third, we are asking and our partners or the hyperlocal CSOs to go out there and work with their community to increase the community level digital literacy so that we will indeed transition into a more digital nation as we have proposed through our government's action and other plans.
You have just mentioned the digital literacy. If you compare with other Asian countries, I know that you have been working in other Asian countries as well. How is the Mongolia's ranking in digital literacy?
So in terms of digital literacy, because of our general literacy, we could be considered in the higher half of the region, But again, we have to remember one thing. In digital space, there is no continent or there is no region. It's just wild, wild west, everything and everyone in the same space. So we could compare ourselves to Americans and then see where we are at. For example, the 30% of the high schoolers in the US are using AI tools to complete their homework. And one has to wonder how many of us are using AI or other innovative tools in our everyday life. So in that aspect, there is lots of room to improve, to say the least.
Another direction where People in Need Mongolia works is emergency response and climate resilience. And in terms of these two themes, what kind of works are being conducted here in Mongolia?
So when there is an emergency, the first priority is to make sure that everyone is recovered. So that's something that we do throughout the pandemic years, and this year, especially last summer during the flood, we have responded to those who were affected by these emergencies, either through cash assistance or other packages. But again, the question we have to ask ourselves is that, are we ready for the next pandemic or the emergency? And the answer might be, we are not. So what can we do to be prepared, to be more prepared and ready when these emergencies struck? So in that regard, we are working with both private and public sectors to make sure that early warning systems are in place, to alert the public or the group of people in a certain location about the incoming emergency, whether it's dzud or strong wind or a flood or the next societal emergency. So in that aspect, we are working in both directions, both the recovery. At the same time, we are trying to establish more of a sustained and long-term solutions to address these problems.
Even though the Mongolia is considered low-risk country, in terms of climate, for example, during the winter times, people living in the rural areas, they suffer from the dzud, severe winter, and in contrary, residents in Ulaanbaatar are more suffering from the carbon dioxide emissions because there's a lot of gir areas. What kind of works are being done in this direction?
So that's a big question, but thank you for the question as well. So in terms of climate resiliency, we are working to make sure that first ever in the region actually, sustainable financing model is piloted in Mongolia through certain standard development, particularly around eco-labeling. So we have talked about sustainable development, sustainable financing, eco-products, but at the end of the day, what specific product or output can you imagine to really think about when you think about these concepts? And we have thought long and hard about this and planned carefully to create this eco-labeling standard in Mongolia. It is going through a certain process at the government right now. And if it is approved and if it is operational in the coming years, we will then have access to global market. Our MSMEs meaning micro, small, medium enterprises would have access to international market through this eco-labeling, because we will then make sure that these manufacturing and product processes are both sustainable and as we call eco, right? So we are working in this regard to make sure that Mongolian businesses are climate resilient. But at the same time, we have to remember that Mongolia, particularly urban areas, not just Ulaanbaatar, are suffering from one of the worst air pollution sceneries throughout the world. Just to cite a few examples, in 2019, for example, the Mongolia, according to the National Statistics Office data, only for a brief period of 1 month, Ulaanbaatar citizens were able to breathe fresh air that was within the standards of the national government. So that goes to show how severe this problem or the issue has been. So in this regard, both in terms of improving indoor and outdoor air quality, we are working with UNICEF Mongolia, the Mongolian Sustainable Financing Association, and the Mongolian University of Science and Technology to scale up the initiative called CHIP, or the Cooking Heating Insulation Product, in Ulaanbaatar, 2 districts, and 7 other provinces throughout Mongolia. So with this work, we hope to support the government's efforts to curb air pollution, but at the same time instill in public and especially Ger community households' mind that insulation is the most cost-effective way to reduce household spending on energy, whether it's coal or electricity, but at the same time contribute towards reducing the air pollution issue that we have been wrestling for the last 20 years almost.
And what kind of other solutions would you propose to tackle this air pollution issue besides insulation?
So that's a really good question, because our approach has to be on the constant lookout for other solutions, because there is no single silver bullet to address these problems. We have to always remember this. And insulation is one way to do this, but at the same time it has to be coupled with other solutions. For example, improving our standards and fuel gas types, for example. That's one. Another one could be electrification of the heating or the thermal systems, both in Ger districts and other areas, and ramping up our investment on renewable energy to make sure that there is a sufficient source of electricity and energy for 220,000 Ger community households. And this has to be coupled with air quality management, air quality monitoring, because then we will be constantly reminded every year whether we are actually improving the air quality or not. And if there is an evidence that these actions and collective efforts are resulting in even smallest amount of air quality improvement, then we'll have to strengthen and we'll just have to invest more into those efforts. So there is a government policy document called the National Program on Reducing Environmental Pollution, which outlines almost 9 modules of different actions to curb air pollution. So if we could just implement and commit to this program, I'm sure that we will be able to breathe fresh air in soon. I don't want to give any certain period or a number.
I know that People in Need Mongolia operates with the donations from various organizations. And how, as a non-governmental organization, do you maintain the transparency in case of the donations?
So transparency and accountability as an internal procedure of the organization is our priority. So every year we are being audited by an independent tertiary agency to make sure that our spending is transparent, our human resources processes are understandable and simple, and at the same time up to certain standards, both ethical and other professional aspects. So, in short, independent audit, but at the same time some internal procedures and tools, guidelines to help us make sure that all these processes are within the guidelines.
You have just mentioned the main three directions that you have worked in 2023. And looking forward in 2024, what kind of programs and projects are you looking forward to implement?
So we will continue to work in these three areas, continue to improve our approach and improve our programmatic activities, and strengthen our collaboration, ongoing good collaboration with the government and various agencies, but at the same time maintaining our close coordination with the civil society organizations. Particularly, I would like to do more in the space of environmental pollution, particularly air pollution, both in terms of air quality management, but at the same time actions around reducing the pollution itself. And as I mentioned earlier, we are going to ramp up our implementation around digital literacy for the marginalized group. So we have seen through the education program or the education curriculum reform that in high school, public school, perhaps in early childhood development aspects, there is going to be more of a formal injection of the digital literacy elements into the curriculum. But what would happen to those who are outside the formal education system, such as the elderly, such as those who have migrated to towns and other urban areas recently, children and people with disabilities, for example. So we are going to work with those people, those communities, to make sure that they are also capacitated on digital literacy, so that we could then reduce what we are terming as the digital divide between those different segments and age groups as well.
As this is the last episode of 2023, I would like to leave the last moments to you. Maybe you would like to mention the organizations or partners that have supported the people in Need Mongolia.
So People in Need Mongolia, as a Czech-based organization, we have received various donations and other funding from the Czech people on monthly basis, and the Czech government as well. But our biggest donor in the past few years has been European Union and the European Union delegation here in Mongolia. And both as partners and donors, we have been working with some of the UN agencies, particularly UNICEF Mongolia and UNDP in the past. So we would like to thank those organizations and their donors as well, and bilateral development agencies and other diplomatic missions here in the country.
Well, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and taking part in our interview program.
Thank you very much for the invitation as well.
Well, that was the new episode of Sightline, and we'll see you next year with more stories and updates. Have a nice day and happy holidays.